Courtney, the Bears did get good news today on the injury report. I was worried when I saw Brisker and his name come up as a did not practice if they would have practiced yesterday. Today they did practice, and it sounds like they got most guys back at the very least in a limited capacity.
Yeah, so he was upgraded to full along with Kyle Monungai, and I tweeted out some video of them moving around, and it didn't really look like either had any sort of restriction, which is good because those are two positions that certainly at running back they're thin right now in terms of skill, but at safety, to be able to have him out there, knowing that they probably don't have Terry McLaurin out there this weekend, it just kind of trying to win that matchup with the numbers game of having your starters there is a good sign. So there's one more day of practice tomorrow. The one that I think you'll want to keep an eye on, because it doesn't sound like Grady Jarrett's going to go this week. I think it's going to be at least another week before he's out there. He was DNP today again. The Darnell Wright one's interesting because he was upgraded to limited. He was DNP, yes. He would have been DNP yesterday and then upgraded to limited. And a couple of us were talking to him in the locker room. He had his elbow brace on. He didn't really want to say much about the injury. And then when the cameras got around, this dude's get off, he still got it. Don't worry about that. He got out of there. I've never seen a man that size move that quickly out of a situation like that. That he clearly wanted no part of talking about his elbow injury. And while it might still be a week away for him just because he was limited, I'd imagine if he's limited again tomorrow, he'll be questionable on the injury report, and it's a good opportunity to not rush him back when you do have Ozzie Trapilo waiting and ready to play again. But that's, sign that that's going in the right direction considering what we were able to see today.
Courtney, what if he doesn't play? And I think Chief was joking earlier about getting Wally pipped. What if the line just plays better as a whole and Trapilo quits himself well, and then you've got Theo Benedict on the left side playing well. What if that were to happen? Would they ever think about continuing to go this way, or is it Darnell Wright's job?
Yeah, I think you have to. Let's not forget Darnell Wright was not one of Ben Johnson's draft picks, and Ozzie Trapilo is. He's made no bones about the fact that he wants competition, and no matter where you're drafted, how much you're paid, all of those things, for now, he's remained true to that. And I think we've seen that at a number of different positions, maybe on a smaller scale, just even with Josh Blackwell. The guy earns a contract extension this offseason, is your backup nickel corner, but got Wally pipped, if you want to call it that, lost his job to Nick McLeod when he had an injury and when he was healthy and came back, he didn't have a job anymore on defense at that spot. They're not afraid to do that. And I think it's a good sign that what you saw with Braxton Jones, they weren't afraid at that moment when there was still time left in the first half. They were still trying to do something, that they didn't just wait until halftime to make a change, which is why that is a benching. I know they didn't want to call it that, but that's what that is. And I think for Trapilo, the option here is give him more run. Don't rush Darnell Wright back. But if it ends up working out that your second-round pick is better than your first-round pick, you go with the guy who you're going to have, A, more time with, and B, can develop in ways that, Darnell Wright either maybe can't or maybe they've already seen with him. Maybe he's reached the best he can play. And he's obviously a unicorn. Ben has said that. He appreciates what he brings as a complete player, run blocking, pass blocking, all of it. But there's a lot of untapped potential and unknown with Ozzie Trapilo. We know he can play right tackle. They drafted 2 right tackles for some reason in 3 years. So one of them's got to work, and if that ultimately will mean that one of them is on the bench because neither of them are left tackles. So I think if it happens, then that just becomes what you ride with. I mean, certainly it doesn't look great if you have a top 10 pick sitting on the bench or somebody who becomes your swing tackle, but that is a risk that they knew they were going to run when they spent a high draft pick on Trapilo after drafting Darnell Wright 2 years before.
You mentioned the nickel position. Kyler Gordon still limited too after signing that big free agent contract. What do you think his status is for this weekend?
He said he's playing, so
okay.
I mean, I'll take him at face value for that because he's been pretty confident the last couple of weeks that he's going towards it. So that's good. And I think Dennis Allen said it well today. He really hasn't played that much football since December of last year. So how effective can he be? I think that that's probably tipping their hand a little bit that, yeah, he'll be active on game day. Is he going to be on a pitch count? Are they going to, limit his reps out there? I wouldn't say necessarily be in base more, considering, what Jayden Daniels can do. Obviously, you've got to have, you have to account for him as a rushing quarterback as much as you do in the passing game. But this is a hamstring injury. Like, they do not want him to do something to set himself back. So I would think that if this continues on another day and he's feeling good, that he'll be able to play. It just won't be the full load quite yet because he's got to ramp up with real game action to make himself get there.
One reason why I like talking about the past is how it shapes someone going forward. And I thought Tyrique Stevenson this week was very good, Courtney. I originally saw him on the recap on Cap's YouTube channel with Byard, and I thought he was very forthright on pointing the finger at him, saying that he needed this in order to change, that even though this isn't him, that's the way he put it on film, that is him, even though he wants to say that it's not him. I thought he leaned into it nicely. He's been playing well the last couple of weeks. What did you think about the way he's been pretty self-aware here lately?
Yeah, I think he's turned a corner with that. And the response to one of the questions the other day when he said, I wouldn't have changed had that not happened. Now, obviously, you don't want that to happen because while it was one play, it was still a loss that torpedoed their season. It just is the only thing that you remember from that game. And you don't want that associated with yourself. You're in your third year. It wasn't like you had this great career up until that point and it's one massive blunder that, will derail things. That has a chance when you're early on to kill your confidence and to kill, to kill the opinion that your teammates, your coaches, the front office have of you. If he's not a second-round pick, he's probably cut for doing that the next day. That's the thing that saved him, his talent. And he is a talented player who stepped into a role that, he probably didn't think he would have had to, even though he was filling in for Jalen Johnson, and he and Darnell Wright were battling all throughout training camp, for that number 2 spot. Now, quarterback 1 is Tyrique Stevenson, and I thought he's done a really good job at grasping that role and also everything that comes with it, because there's a certain style. He plays his game much more physically than I think any of the other outside corners on this team, and that's what makes him great. But there's a line that you have to walk, and I think that he knows his leash is short. He doesn't in any game, Washington, any of the other opponents that they have on the schedule, he can't do some of the things that he did a year ago and maybe even before that he was able to get away with, some of the showboating, some of the just the way that he played the game. Everybody gets a wake-up call at a certain time in their life, and his just so happened to be on a very public stage. And I asked him about it in the sense of, what are we talking about this week? Players that are, have the one play that's the highlight play on in a bad way on all the shows, on all everything we're talking about. It's DeMarcado from Arizona. And I asked him about just the empathy that you have for guys like that. He's been in their shoes where there's one play that cost a team a game. His just so happened to be on the final play, so we remember it so much more, whereas, Arizona could have gone up 28-6. But that's I think you learn from that. You learn what this league is and how one thing can turn a fan base against somebody. And then you can, just in that same breath, you can get back into the good graces of these fans by playing well, by doing your job, which he's done the last 2 weeks. He made an incredible play against the Raiders for his first interception of the year. And I really think it was that week going into Dallas when he was coming off a terrible performance against the Lions where he turned it on and he became a different player.
Has there been much talk as a motivating factor about going back to the scene of the crime, whether it's Stevenson or the rest of the team? Because you lose that game, then they lose 10 in a row. Is there an underlying discussion about, hey, we got to show up this week?
No, I don't think internally, and I've gotten that question a lot. I know nationally that's what they talk about. When you watch Countdown on Monday, that's what the story is going to be. They will be playing that highlight again and again and again because the national audience doesn't remember a lot of the in-between that happened from that point in week 8 to where we are right now in week 6. But I think that they've done a good job because this is a different team. It's a different coaching staff, a competent coaching staff that probably wouldn't have let the final 2 plays of that game play out the way that they did. And I think that that trust factor from the players allows but to know that they're in better hands. That something like that doesn't need to be lurking over them. They don't need any added motivation, because the motivation itself is there. Like, they're not a good team historically coming out of the bye week. They're 2-10 since 2013. That to me it weighs more as far as let's flip the script than what happened in Washington last year. And of course, for Caleb Williams battling with Jayden Daniels, he's taken a pick before him. He's going back home to the DMV area. Like, I'm sure it carries a little bit more weight, but I think as far as the Hail Mary is concerned, that's something that they buried. It'll always be on the mind of Bears fans. It's a moment that, lives in infamy for the wrong reasons, but there's enough other stuff that I think, it creates bigger storylines around this game than that.
Courtney, before we let you go, we have not had you on since we were all in Vegas together, or at least when I was here. What did you think of the dinner? You've been out to dinner with us, but never as a whole ESPN unit together. You go out with reporter friends, too, when you're on the road. What did you think of our dinner on the Saturday night before the Vegas game?
I thought it was fantastic. I think Keith picked a great restaurant. I thought the wine was great. I thought the steak was great. I thought Yurko was great. I got an earful about Sean Alexander
Unbelievable.
And his Hall of Fame case. And I still, if he's listening right now, I'm still crunching the numbers on Priest Holmes and Frank Gore and Sean Alexander, because it made me think. I was like, maybe it's not as much of a slam dunk case for Frank Gore. Maybe he was just a part of some good teams and had the name recognition. But no, it was a wonderful time. It was so great to have everybody together, and hopefully there will be another trip in our future where we get to do it again.
Sounds good. Courtney, great work as always. Thank